This clip is a spoiler of content, and those wanting to watch the full movie can skip this clip. Children, pregnant women, or elderly people with heart conditions should watch with care. Viewers who are alone are advised to hug a pillow, and those with partners should hold loved ones. We hope everyone enjoys listening. Thank you. Ghost 8 Holes. Hole 1. Night Shift Guard. The guard in charge of an abandoned building came to resign with Miss Kombucha, the head of the security company. He asked to resign, saying he encountered a ghost and could no longer endure working there. The supervisor was upset, as this month alone had seen 3 guards change for the building. The night before resigning, he and his friend Yoshisawa were assigned to guard the abandoned building, which was set for demolition. The place looked very scary, making Hashi feel uneasy about patrolling the different floors. Yoshisawa, being braver, decided to scare Hashi for fun, which startled Hashi greatly. They then talked about the night they saw a female ghost in the building, and Hashi just learned that Yoshisawa had seen the same thing. Hashi believed the woman he saw must be a ghost, but Yoshisawa suggested he might be overthinking it, as it could just be a curtain, insisting that ghosts do not exist in the world. While they were walking and discussing, Hashi tripped over his shoelace and bent down to tie it, asking Yoshisawa to wait for him at the stairs. But Yoshisawa ignored him and walked ahead, leaving Hashi alone. Out of fear, Hashi hurriedly tied his shoelaces. And when Hashi looked up, he found himself surrounded by a group of ghosts in front of him. Hashi was so scared that he screamed loudly before the scene cut to him sitting in the guard room. After a while, Yoshisawa called Hashi to have a late-night meal together. While Hashi was preparing to eat, Yoshisawa excused himself to go to the bathroom. At that moment, Hashi, sitting alone, felt something strange. Just as he was about to take a bite of his food, he felt something brush against him. He turned to look and saw the pale face of a ghost leaning in, as if it were asking for alms or a blessing. Just then, Yoshisawa returned and also saw the ghost, but pretended not to see anything, telling Hashi that what he saw might just be his imagination. The supervisor was very troubled to hear that Hashi wanted to resign, as 3 night guards had already quit that month alone. At that moment, the supervisor opened the file containing the resignation requests and found that everyone had the same reason for leaving. They all claimed the building was fine, but they encountered ghosts. After that, the supervisor decided to call another employee to help check the building again, and the employee agreed to go because he saw that the supervisor was concerned. Proud of this, that night, as Yoshisawa came on duty, as usual, he raised his hands to look left and right, as if someone was watching him. Hayashi, who had experienced it before, wondered why Yoshisawa could endure this. Despite seeing the ghost as well, the supervisor sent a new guard to work the night shift, with Yoshisawa introducing herself as Nakamalrat. They went to patrol the abandoned building assigned to them, on different floors. After a while, Yoshisawa excused himself to go to the bathroom. While alone, he heard strange noises and saw handprints smeared around the walls. Upon seeing this, he tried to follow the sound until he entered a room, alone. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the ghost appeared to haunt him. Then, a phone call came directly to the office for the supervisor, which was from Nakamalrat, who called to resign in the middle of the night, saying there was a ghost here, before hanging up. After that, the supervisor hurriedly ran out of the building, leaving Yoshisawa, who was mentally strong, to work the night shift alone. Seeing this, Yoshisawa remarked that it was just the imagination of the other person. After the supervisor received the phone call, he felt that something was strange and seemed to hear some noise interrupting the conversation. He decided to listen to the recording of the call with Nakamura again, and it turned out that Nakamura also heard the sound of a woman laughing on the line. This led to the next night when Moonrat had to go to the site herself in the middle of the night. There she encountered Yoshizawa, who was startled awake from a dream where a long-haired sister was choking him. The supervisor noticed that there were indeed bruises on his subordinate's neck, and as the boss, he felt that something was truly strange here. But he tried to convince himself that it might be nothing. After a while, Yoshizawa and Nakamura heard the sound of footsteps running around, and Yoshizawa realized it was time to go out for the night patrol. He excused himself to perform his duties, but it seemed that Yoshizawa was comfortable working alone without any fear of ghosts. Nakamura decided to join him for the patrol. As they reached the first floor, Yoshizawa suddenly stopped and chuckled softly on the stairs. Nakamura, hearing this, stood confused about what was happening. It turned out that Yoshizawa remembered he had forgotten the key needed to open the rooftop door. So he hurriedly excused himself to go get the key. At that moment, Nakamura, who was alone, saw the shadow of the sister walking down towards him. But then, at that moment, Yoshizawa returned just in time to say that what Nakamura saw was just a figment of his imagination. Yoshizawa then walked up to unlock the rooftop door and went out to explore, stating that everything was fine and there was nothing there. He was about to walk back down when Nakamura noticed a room that hadn't been checked yet and asked why they didn't open it. Yoshizawa replied that there was nothing, he just didn't want to go in. However, since Nakamura saw it as a duty to check, despite being scared, they both opened the door to that mysterious room. Once inside, suddenly there was a loud toilet flush, but Yoshizawa told her he was used to it and that it was nothing, it just sounded like that. Then Yoshizawa suggested they split up to check, and Nakamura went to inspect another room that looked like a dormitory. The atmosphere in that room was very eerie, but he didn't see anything until just as he was about to walk out. He noticed ghosts standing densely packed in the room, which shocked him almost to the point of fainting. At the same moment, Yoshizawa came in and told him not to worry about them, saying there was nothing to pay attention to. On the following morning, the head of the security company requested to resign and noted that the abandoned building was fine, but there were both women, men, and children. Later, at that time, a lawyer was sitting and relaxing in a public park in the city when Yoshizawa happened to walk by and saw him. They greeted each other as acquaintances. Nakamura was looking for a job, while Yoshizawa continued to work at the same old building, living his life as usual. He was still being followed by ghosts who constantly asked for merit. Yoshizawa had gotten used to it, so he continued to work and live normally, even though he knew there were ghosts all around him. The second hole. Smoke illusion. In front of a restaurant hosting a company celebration, a man was sending messages to his girlfriend Keiko, who was upset with him, outside the banquet hall. He seemed very busy and quite worried, and his co-workers were calling him to go karaoke with the boss. The scene then shifted to Hieko and his friends Tomomi and Reina, who were driving to a provincial trip. While the three girls were driving to find a house to throw a party to spite their boyfriends, Hieko sent a message to apologize to Keiko, asking where she had gone. However, she was still upset with him and didn't reply. Suddenly, the three girls heard a strange chilling sound, like a wailing accompanied by a whisper. But they didn't think much of it. After driving for a while, it seemed that Hieko and his friends had lost their way. Having driven deep into an unknown forest, where there were no signs of houses or shops along the road, after arguing that it was Hieko's fault for taking the wrong route, they decided to return to the hotel first. But the more they drove, the more lost they became. In front of them, there was nothing at all, and as it got darker, the three girls could barely see the road. They decided to stop by the roadside to smoke. Then, Tashimana sent another message asking Keiko where she was because he wanted to come see her. However, Hieko, still upset, did not reply to his message. Even though he wanted to, Hieko didn't even know where he and his friends were at that moment. After smoking for a while, suddenly, Hieko and his friends heard a sound like a fabric being torn, accompanied by wailing again. When they looked around, they realized they were sitting in front of a shrine at a shop. At that moment, they all felt scared, and shivers ran down their spines, thinking it wouldn't be good to stay there any longer, so they hurried to leave. However, a strange energy began to affect Keiko, and she vanished, her body disintegrating into smoke, right before Irina and Tomomi's eyes, resembling the smoke of a cigarette burning down to the end. The sight they witnessed made both girls scream in terror, almost losing their minds as they ran frantically into the forest. However, the haunting sounds continued to echo, tormenting the remaining girls. They had no idea what was happening, but survival was their priority. They couldn't stay there any longer. At that moment, Tomomi, who was following Irina, ran alongside them towards the car. Along the way, she began to panic, realizing they had all agreed to come together, yet now they were facing this horror. When they reached the car, they hurriedly got inside, terrified. But once inside, Tomomi suddenly vanished, turning into smoke just like Keiko had. Irina, witnessing this, was completely confused about what was happening, as both of her friends had mysteriously disappeared amidst all the chaos. Meanwhile, the cigarette they had lit in the car was still burning, with smoke wafting around. After that, Irina heard the strange sound again, this time louder and getting closer to the car. Suddenly, it attacked her, and the scene cut away, leaving no one knowing what happened to the three girls, as they vanished without a trace, with only their screams echoing through the forest. Hole 3 Gloves. The story begins with Yumi, who has just finished work and is about to enter her accommodation. As she returns to her room, she feels someone watching her from the shadows. However, when she looks back, she sees no one. Suddenly, a man greets her. From below, it is Tanada, with whom she once had a good relationship. They greet each other as if they haven't seen each other in a long time. Tanada expresses concern about Yumi, working late, as she is currently a map illustrator who has to travel frequently. Despite this, Tanada is glad that Yumi hasn't moved away yet. That night, he asks to stay at her place, and she doesn't mind because they were once close colleagues and had a deeper relationship than just friends. Tanada often came to Yumi for comfort when he was feeling down, leading Yumi to wonder if they could eventually get married. However, it seems impossible since Tanada has a girlfriend, Asuka, which makes Yumi decide to end their relationship and change jobs at that time. Now that Tanada has returned and is staying at her place, Yumi, who doesn't want to go in circles again, asks Tanada to make this the last time he visits. That night, something strange happened. Suddenly, Yumi felt odd, as if she were having a nightmare of being strangled, which made her unable to breathe and caused her to wake up abruptly. Meanwhile, Tanada, who was sleeping nearby, continued to sleep soundly. The next morning, Tanada told Yumi that Asuka, his girlfriend, had just had a fight with him because she wouldn't break up and even threatened to commit suicide. Yumi, not wanting to get involved in Tanada's personal relationship, paid little attention as she was preparing to go to work. However, she noticed that her lipstick was missing, even though she hadn't used it, as if this were an ominous sign. At this point, Tanada seemed very troubled, so he asked to stay with Yumi for another night, saying he felt at ease with her. Yumi didn't refuse, as deep down she still seemed to have feelings for him. However, after they parted ways to go to work that morning, Yumi couldn't help but think about him, wondering how Tanada was living, where he was staying, and what he was doing, as she hadn't heard anything about him since they separated. She never asked him about it, thinking it would be pointless. One night, after finishing work late, Yumi was organizing her home when she fell asleep. In the middle of the night, she had a nightmare of a ghost wearing long white gloves, strangling her out of anger. She thought it was just a dream. However, in the morning, Yumi woke up feeling weak. As she sat down to get ready and comb her hair, her comb suddenly broke and her belongings began to break for no reason. She wondered if this was an ominous sign, warning her of something bad to come. When she looked in the mirror again, she noticed bruises around her neck, as if she had truly been strangled, and she realized that this was not just a dream. As time went on, she was strangled repeatedly every night, causing her to start having insomnia. Finally, when Tanada visited her again, Yumi shared this strange occurrence with him. Tanada was shocked because he had also been having the same recurring strange dream, where he would come to Yumi's room every night. Both of them experienced this bizarre phenomenon simultaneously. However, that night, when she allowed him to stay over, she had a nightmare worse than ever before, feeling as if a ghost was strangling her so hard that it felt like she was dying. After that, she thought her encounters with Tanada should come to an end, as she believed there must be something connected to this nightmare. The following day and night, nothing happened to her anymore. The nightly strangling ceased. She was astonished and very happy that this strange occurrence had finally come to an end. One day, she received an invitation to a wedding, and on the card was a picture of the bride and groom, which were Tanada and Asuka, who were about to get married. When she looked closely at the card, she noticed that Asuka, in her wedding dress, was wearing long white gloves, similar to the ones that had been strangling her. That night, she realized that the haunting she experienced every night was due to Asuka's jealousy and resentment, fearing she would lose the man she loved. With this conclusion, she decided to let go of everything that had happened and threw the invitation card into the trash, resolving not to contact Tanada again. Yumi moved to a new house and job, and she no longer encountered the story of the bride and groom. However, she didn't know what would happen to them. Yumi told herself that no matter what happened to them, she did not want to get involved in this matter anymore. Hold for the burden. In the early morning at a house, Mizuki wakes up feeling as if a ghost is sitting on her stomach. At that moment, she cannot speak, and her son Jira cannot help her either, until she tries to reach for the alarm clock above her head and hits the invisible ghost, which works. After a while, her ghostly symptoms disappear, and Mizuki can breathe again and put the clock back in its place. However, this time the ghost comes out to haunt her directly. It appears sitting at her headboard and slowly leans down closer to her face. Mizuki feels so scared that she almost screams, while at that moment, Jira moves as if he is about to wake up. The ghost then turns its attention to Jira instead. Despite Mizuki's fear, her maternal instinct is much stronger, so she gathers her courage and stares back at the ghost, trying to protect her child. After a while, the ghost fades away. Mizuki immediately hugs her son upon seeing that Jira is safe. She then gets up to get a drink of water, but when she looks in the mirror, she sees the ghost sitting on her son. This causes Jira to struggle and gasp for air. Mizuki, seeing this, is very shocked and screams in concern for her child. The ghost hears her and turns its head 360 degrees to smile at Mizuki in a terrifying way. But that's not all. The ghost then lifts itself up and jumps heavily onto Jira. At that moment, Mizuki rushes in to help her son immediately before the scene cuts away, leaving everyone unaware of what will happen next. Hole 5, the Cluster of Curses. At the basketball court of a school, Yukio and his best friend are celebrating their success after graduating from university. They are happy to have found jobs and decide to play basketball at their old school to reminisce about the joyful times they had there. Time has passed so quickly that they feel a sense of nostalgia. After enjoying their game, Yukio accidentally sends the basketball into a storage room, and they appear nervous about entering that room. Yukio has been curious about something since their school days, so he takes this opportunity to investigate something in that room. Although he is scared, he wants to prove something because it has been written in that room for a long time, and no one has dared to investigate after the school had its stories passed down. When they enter the room, the ball bounces against a large mirror covered with a red cloth, and they have no idea what happened during their school days. However, it seems that the mirror has a legend that makes both Yukio and his friend feel scared and curious at the same time. Once inside, Yukio decides to pull the cloth off to see what the mirror really is, but when they remove the cloth, they find nothing. It remains just an ordinary mirror. But at that moment, suddenly, the sound of Ken's phone rang, so he excused himself to talk outside, leaving Yukio alone with the mirror. But at that moment, while Yukio was bending down to write, he looked up at the mirror and encountered a ghostly hand reaching out from the mirror, pulling him in. Just then, after returning from his phone call, Ken was about to tell Yukio that he had urgent business and needed to leave. However, when he returned to the storage room, he found no sign of his friend. Yukio had vanished, leaving only the empty storage room and shattered pieces of the mirror scattered across the floor. Seeing this, he picked up a shard of glass and noticed the shadow of a ghost behind him, which startled him so much that he froze. In the meantime, the sound of a woman's laughter echoed throughout, prompting Ken to quickly run out to the basketball court and lock the storage room behind him. Despite the laughter still echoing around him, he felt so scared that he bowed his head and cried out like a madman. After a while, the laughter ceased, and he slowly lifted his head, thinking that the ghost had stopped haunting him. However, when he turned around, he was confronted by a terrifying ghostly woman running towards him, holding a basketball in her hand.